Okay, imagine this. Over 577,000 tons of textile waste just dumped every year. And that's just in Bangladesh.
Yeah, it's a huge number. And get this, the forecasts. They predict something like a 60% jump globally in textile waste.
A 60% increase between 2015 and 2030.
Mm-hmm.
It really makes you think twice about, that shirt you bought and wore once, shoved in the back of the wardrobe.
It absolutely does. But what's compelling, I think, is how all this discarded stuff is actually sparking some really inventive solutions.
Okay.
We're seeing a real rise in something called upcycling.
Upcycling. Okay, let's dig into that. So this isn't just like dropping off a bag at the charity shop.
No, not quite. It's about taking those unwanted materials, those discarded things, and completely transforming them.
Transforming them how?
Into new products. But here's the key bit. These new things end up being of higher quality or value.
Higher value. So it's the opposite of downcycling, where stuff gets turned into, I don't know, rags or insulation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Spot on. Upcycling is about adding value, flipping the script on waste.
Right. And for this deep dive, we've got to source a review paper.
Yeah, a really interesting review.
Yeah.
It looks at upcycling not just as, a nice eco-friendly hobby, but as a serious strategic tool.
Yeah.
Something the fashion industry is actually starting to use for sustainability.
Strategic tool. Interesting.
Yeah, this review pulls together a whole load of information to really understand how brands are weaving upcycling into their actual strategies.
Okay. So the mission for you listening right now is to really get a handle on why upcycling is becoming such a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
We want you to walk away understanding what it actually involves, how it works in practice, and maybe crucially why it seems like it's more than just a passing trend.
Definitely more than a trend.
Yeah.
And if we zoom out a bit, the fashion industry, well, it's obviously essential, second only to food and water maybe.
Right.
But it does have a pretty significant environmental footprint across the whole supply chain.
Yeah, our source really lays that out. It talks about this direct link between our wanting new clothes all the time and these just mountains of waste.
The direct connection.
It paints a picture, a single pair of jeans. Think about it. 68 liters of water.
Wow.
1.5 kilowatts of energy and over 140 grams of chemicals.
Just for one pair.
Just for one pair. And then, where do they often end up? Landfill.
And the scale we mentioned earlier, that 500,000+ tons in Bangladesh.
Yeah.
Get this, half of that is actually recyclable cotton.
Yeah.
Potentially worth like $100 million.
Just sitting there as waste.
Just sitting there. And it's not just Bangladesh, obviously. The UK fashion industry. And it generates something like 20 million tons of wastewater.
20 million tons.
And over 3 million tons of CO2 every year.
It feels like a bit of a perfect storm, doesn't it? You've got more people on the planet.
Mm-hmm. Growing population.
People consuming more stuff, and this global fashion market just booming. Projected to hit, $2.25 trillion by 2025?
Trillion. Yeah. So more demand means more production.
And inevitably, more waste.
And this whole thing really, really accelerated with fast fashion.
Right.
Clothing production actually doubled between 2000 and 2014.
Doubled in 14 years.
Yep. Because clothes got cheaper, trends changed faster. We just started buying way more.
And thinking of it as disposable almost.
Exactly. That buy it, wear it twice, toss it mentality. That shift from clothes being durable things to just disposable commodities. That's a huge part of this waste crisis.
And it's not just environmental, is it? The source mentions the social cost, too. Rana Plaza?
Yes. The factory collapse.
It calls it a horrific and depressing metaphor. It really brings home the human side of the industry.
Yeah, it really does. It makes you think about the whole chain.
So all this awareness, the environmental and social side, it's pushing people to look for alternatives, and that's where upcycling comes in.
Precisely. It offers some real promise. Yeah. And the term itself, upcycling, it actually goes back to 1994.
Oh, okay. So not super new.
Not brand new, no. Coined by a German engineer, Rainer Pilz. And his whole idea was simple but powerful. We need to give old products more value, not less.
More value. I like that. So where did he first apply this idea? Not fashion, I guess.
No, actually construction. He was looking at building materials that were just getting crushed or thrown away.
Right. Bricks, concrete.
Exactly. And he argued, everything could potentially be a resource for something else. We should be finding ways to reuse things that actually increases their value.
Okay, I can see the connection. Lessons for fashion there, maybe.
Absolutely. And while it started in construction, the fashion industry has really latched onto upcycling. Yeah. They see the potential to add significant value through, well, creative transformation.
Creative transformation. Okay, so how does that actually work? What does the process look like? Is it just cutting things up and sewing them back together?
Sometimes, but it's often more nuanced. What's really innovative is how it pushes designers. They have to think differently, find new uses, create something genuinely original from what's already there.
So the designer is key.
Oh, totally. Their role is crucial in taking these discarded materials and, through skill and imagination, making them not just look better, but function better too, adding aesthetic and functional value.
It sounds less like a strict formula and more organic, fluid. Depends on the materials you find.
Exactly that. It develops naturally. It requires creativity, obviously, but also a good understanding of different techniques.
Okay, like what kind of techniques are we talking about?
Oh, there's a whole toolbox. You've got things like fusing different fabrics together, though you have to be careful with synthetics, obviously.
Right, they might melt.
Then there are these beautiful traditional techniques, like from Japan, horshiku.
Oh, yeah, that visible mending, the decorative stitching, often on indigo.
That's the one. And boro, which is all about sewing different scraps of cloth together. It started as reinforcement, but it creates this incredible, unique textile, almost like a fabric collage with history.
I've seen pictures of boro. It's stunning. So much texture and story.
Exactly. And the list goes on, really. There's slashing, making deliberate cuts for texture.
Okay.
Creative pattern cutting, totally rethinking the shape of a garment. Collage, obviously. Deconstruction, taking things apart and putting them back together in new ways.
Right.
Fabric manipulation is huge, gathering, shirring, pleating, tucking, smocking. Even just a skillful mending can become a design feature.
Mending as design. I like that.
Then there's dyeing, using heat, layering, felting. Incorporating skills like weaving, crochet, knitting into existing materials.
It sounds like you're giving the material a whole new vocabulary.
That's a great way to put it. Reconstruction is a really key strategy here. Using folding, hollowing, sewing, attaching things, weaving, twisting.
And not just for clothes.
No, absolutely not. These techniques pop up in jewelry, in art pieces. And then there's the idea of combining different materials, maybe traditional ones, with high-tech methods to create totally new blended fabrics.
So every single upcycled piece is basically one of a kind. It has to be, right? Because it depends on what you find.
Pretty much, yeah. It adapts to the resources, the creativity, the specific need.
Yeah.
And you can even change things on the surface. Printing new designs, dyeing, adding embroidery or beads, manipulating the fabric surface itself.
Wow.
The source also talks about broader methods. Subtraction, taking bits away, deconstruction, like we said, addition, adding new bits, and refunctioning.
Refunctioning.
Yeah, turning one thing into something completely different. Like the example given is turning old baseball caps into a tank top.
Okay.
Or using the arms from old glasses to make jewelry.
That's really thinking outside the box. Seeing the potential in every little piece. But it sounds like upcycling isn't just about making new clothes from old clothes anymore.
Oh, definitely not. The innovation in using textile waste is going way beyond fashion.
How so?
Well, researchers are doing some amazing things, like taking waste cotton fibers, shoddy, they call it, and turning it into strong composite materials for construction.
Right, back to construction.
Exactly. Others are mixing cotton, viscose, silk waste with biobinders to make architectural materials. Scientists are even using enzymes like tiny biological scissors to break down old cotton and extract glucose, which is a type of sugar.
Glucose from old T-shirts.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
And turning keratin waste, that's protein from things like wool or hair, into new textile fibers.
Wow.
They're making porous materials from cellulose waste, high-performance nanofiber foams from wood and Kevlar waste.
That sounds like science fiction almost. Nanofiber foams.
It's cutting-edge stuff. And even extracting nanocellulose, a really versatile, strong material from discarded cotton clothes.
So we're not just talking about a cool jacket anymore. We're talking about finding entirely new raw materials, new applications for stuff we just used to call trash.
That's exactly it. The potential for textile waste to become a genuinely valuable resource across loads of different industries, it's huge.
This all sounds incredibly positive then. What are the main headline benefits of this whole upcycling movement?
Well, they're really multifaceted. Obviously, the big one is the environment.
Right. Less waste.
Less waste, definitely. But also a much smaller carbon footprint. Upcycled clothing can use like 95% less energy compared to making new stuff from scratch.
95%? That's massive.
It is. And it keeps materials out of landfill, promotes that whole circular economy idea, keeping resources in use for longer. And people are noticing. A UK report found over half the population said they'd upcycled or recycled clothes to limit waste.
Over half. That's really significant. It shows it's hitting the mainstream.
It really is. But beyond the green benefits, there are other interesting ones too. Sociocultural, even psychological.
Like what?
Well, it can create a real sense of community, people sharing skills, swapping materials, showing off what they've made.
Yeah, I can see that.
It gives people pride. They learn new skills. It can be really empowering. And it connects different people, craft experts, hobbyists, entrepreneurs, big companies, consumers.
It builds bridges?
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
Facilitates exchange of waste, of resources, of expertise. And for businesses, especially smaller ones starting up, online advertising, social media, it's a really cost-effective way to get the word out and build demand.
Right. Connect directly with customers.
Exactly. Plus, think about education, training, job creation, especially maybe for underprivileged groups. Yeah. It offers real opportunities there.
So it ticks a lot of boxes. Environment, community, economy.
Fundamentally, yeah. It improves material efficiency, slows down that constant flow of new stuff, minimizes the need for virgin resources.
Okay. So with all these clear benefits, how are the big fashion brands and smaller ones too actually, getting on board? How are they using this as part of their business, maybe their marketing?
Well, there's definitely a growing awareness within the industry about the sheer scale of the waste problem.
Yeah.
Landfills, incineration. It's becoming harder to ignore.
And traditional resale, like vintage shops, doesn't solve the whole problem.
It helps, but no, it doesn't deal with everything. So upcycling is looking more and more attractive, more strategic. But, the question always is, how much are they really doing?
Right. Is it a core part of the business or just a small capsule collection for PR?
That's the critical question.
No.
But our source does give some good examples of brands really trying to integrate it.
Okay, like who?
Well, Patagonia is a classic example. Their Wear and Wear program, you trade in old gear, they repair it, repurpose it, upcycle it, resell it, keeping stuff going.
Right. They've been doing that for a while.
They have. Then there's Redone. They partnered with Levi's, taking old vintage jeans and completely remaking them into new modern styles. They claim to have diverted like 145,000 garments from landfill that way.
Wow. And saved water too, presumably?
Millions of gallons, apparently.
Yeah.
Then you've got Beyond Retro, who basically built their whole model around sourcing and upcycling vintage.
Okay.
ELV, denim, they only use post-consumer denim waste. Cuts water use massively. And they're planning a free repair service, too, to make clothes last even longer.
That's a good sign of commitment.
It is. And Tonlé, their mission is basically to make clothes only from waste. They use every single scrap. Tiny bits get spun into yarn, bigger bits joined together.
That sounds intensive.
Yeah.
But really committed.
Very. It shows the different scales, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Big players like Patagonia, niche brands like Tonlé.
And it's happening globally, too, not just in, say, Europe or the U.S.
Absolutely. The review mentions a cool project in Ghana. Fashion students at Accra Technical University collecting discarded clothes from markets.
Right.
Dyeing them, totally remodeling them. Shows the potential everywhere.
Okay, so they're making this cool stuff. How do they then market it? How do they tell people about it and sell it, especially if it's maybe more expensive than fast fashion?
Yeah, that's key. Digital communication is huge here. Social media especially.
Makes sense.
Particularly for reaching younger consumers, Gen Z, who often really care about sustainability.
Mm-hmm.
The source mentions a study on an Indonesian online brand, Kawan. It found that better communication, more interaction on social media was crucial for them.
So being active online, telling the story.
Exactly. Social media is just a really effective tool for marketing sustainable products generally.
Okay. Are there specific tips or strategies the source mentions for brands doing this?
Yeah, it pulls out 12 key points from research by an organization called Redress. Things like, well, obviously, make stuff people actually want to buy. Mm-hmm. Good design is still number one.
Right. It can't just be worthy. It has to be desirable.
Exactly. Know your customer. Have a strong brand story. Explain how you make things, what your impact is.
Tell that story.
Mm-hmm. Keep the message simple and direct. Get online, obviously. Involve your customers somehow. Get certifications if you can. Builds trust. Network with others. Be creative, not just in design, but in marketing. Mm-hmm. Be genuinely sustainable across the board. And the big one?
Let me guess. Transparency.
You got it. Be totally transparent about everything.
Yeah, that seems absolutely critical here, especially with all the worries about greenwashing.
Oh, absolutely. That's the shadow side, isn't it? As consumers get more savvy, some brands try to well, pull the wool over their eyes.
Right.
There's blue washing partnering with the UN for maybe superficial reasons. And then greenwashing, just misrepresenting how eco-friendly you actually are.
Highlighting the one tiny good thing you do while ignoring the massive bad stuff.
Pretty much. The source lists common tactics, like using vague language, making claims that aren't really relevant, hiding trade-offs.
Like promoting recycled packaging but ignoring awful factory conditions.
Exactly that sort of thing. Or using fake labels, making dodgy comparisons, sometimes just outright lying.
And we've seen examples in fashion, haven't we? Brands getting called out.
Definitely. Zara's eco-efficient stores, Boohoo's sustainable collection, H&M's recycling campaign, ASOS's circular line, even Adidas's Stan Smith Forever got flagged as greenwashing in France.
It's disappointing, makes it hard for consumers to know who to trust.
It really does. And things like the lack of mandatory labeling in some places, like Australia apparently, don't help. You just don't have the info.
Are there any reliable certifications?
There are programs,
Yeah.
EU Ecolabel, Cradle to Cradle, others, but even then you can get deceptive practices or just a lack of full transparency. It's tricky.
So what's the solution? More regulation.
That seems to be the direction things are moving. The European Commission is proposing rules to force companies to provide much more detailed labor sourcing production, with potentially big fines if they don't comply or mislead people.
That sounds like a step in the right direction. Accountability.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
And maybe involving consumers more, helping them understand the process, could help them spot bogus claims too.
Right.
Because ultimately, genuine upcycling can be incredibly powerful. It can help brands reduce waste, save resources, drive real change, but it has to be done with integrity.
Integrity and transparency. That
Yeah.
seems to be the recurring theme.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. If we boil down this whole deep dive on upcycling in fashion, what are the absolute key things you should take away?
Right. Okay, first, fashion waste is a massive environmental issue. No getting around that. Second, upcycling is emerging as a really creative, genuinely effective solution, or set of solutions, really.
Right, lots of different techniques.
Loads of techniques and
Ah.
applications that go way beyond just clothes now into construction, material science.
So the benefits are huge, too.
Definitely. Environmental benefits, less energy, less waste. Economic ones, new businesses, jobs, social ones, community, skills.
And brands are using it for marketing.
Yeah, increasingly, both genuinely, which is great, but also sometimes less genuinely, which leads to the final point.
Transparency.
Transparency and awareness.
Yeah.
Brands need to be honest, and we, as consumers, need to be, well, a bit critical. Ask questions.
It really has been fascinating diving into this. It feels like a corner of the fashion world that's just buzzing with ideas and potential.
It really does. And maybe, as you look at your own clothes, just take a second. Think about where those materials came from. And think about the potential they might still have for a second life, maybe even more valuable life, through upcycling.
Yeah. Is it just a trend, or is it something bigger? A real shift in how we value stuff, how we express ourselves?
That's the big question, isn't it? Definitely worth thinking about which brands you support and whether the green claims actually, hold water when you look closer.